Welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show. I'm your host, Ryan Carledge, and I'm passionate about helping you master your animal training skills using the most positive and least intrusive approaches. Here at ATA, we understand that navigating the vast challenges you encounter in training requires a comprehensive base of knowledge and experience. It's common to face obstacles and rough patches on your journey that can leave you feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Therefore, since 2015, we've been on a mission to empower animal training geeks worldwide. We've aided thousands in developing their skills, expanding their knowledge, boosting their confidence, and maximizing their positive impact on all the animal and human learners they work with. We are excited to do the same for you. Simply visit www.atamember.com, join our vibrant community, and geek out with us. And of course, in the meantime, enjoy this free podcast episode as we explore new ways to help you supercharge your training skills, grow your knowledge, and build your confidence, so that you can craft a life that positively impacts every learner you encounter. But we will start today's episode where I'll be talking to one Juliana DeWillems. Juliana is a certified dog trainer and dog behavior consultant and the owner of JW Dog Training in the Washington, D.C. area. She also serves as a Pryor Academy faculty member, teaching trainers about the principles of behavior science and clicker training. When she is not training private clients or teaching her KPA students, Juliana works with brands and media outlets to educate the public about dog training and behavior. Juliana is also the author of the book, Manage It: Hacks for Improving Your Dog's Behavior. So without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Juliana DeWillems to the show today, who's patiently waiting by. Juliana, thank you so much.
Ryan, thanks for having me. This is great.
Well, I love these episodes, Juliana, these episodes being ones where I finally get to connect with a guest whom our audience has been requesting for a while. And to make it even better, when we hosted your friend and co-worker, Ken Ramirez, within our members-only area for a webinar last month, he was tooting your horn as well. And so anyone Ken toots, I'm all about. But let's dive straight into this episode, Juliana. I was hoping that you could please take us all back to where you first learned about animal training, about positive reinforcement, and share some stories with us from your behavior odyssey.
Definitely. So I think like a lot of people, my behavior journey starts quite early. When I was younger, I went to college actually for animal science because I've always loved animals. I didn't want to be a vet because I didn't want to do the schooling, but I went through animal science and got to skip all the tough stuff like, the chemistry and the bio, and instead took, livestock classes. University of Maryland is a land grant school. So we had a really cool curriculum that involved horses and animals, even, on the University of Maryland campus. So I got to do a lot with animals. And then interestingly, right after college, I found a job at the Humane Society by my house. And everyone said, oh my gosh, you went into what you were doing in college, except no, I was doing event planning and fundraising at the Humane Society. So I was definitely working adjacent to animals, but my gosh, I was doing something that I totally had never, ever done before. I had an internship, which is how I got the job, like helping with events. And suddenly I was in charge of event planning and fundraising for this nonprofit. But as many nonprofits go, it was a very small organization, and my event planning desk was directly next to the foster desk. So I would hear them making calls all day long. Can you foster this animal? Can you help this animal? And sure enough, at 21 years old, I brought home my first foster dog, still living with my parents. And I, of course, had a soft spot for the young adolescent, rambunctious pit bull type dogs that often find themselves in shelters for a very long time. And luckily got hooked up with the shelter trainer, who is a positive reinforcement Pryor Academy graduate. And she would help me with the dogs I was fostering. And every step of the way, she would say, "You have to come work for me. Like, you have a knack for this. You should really think about becoming a dog trainer." And I learned a lot through my foster dogs. Pretty quickly, I committed to a positive reinforcement journey. Although I'm not quite sure, like, I've been a crossover trainer with horses, but I've never taught with punishment with dogs. And I'm not quite sure where I like found the right path there. I do remember, watching Cesar Millan and Victoria Stilwell on TV in high school and remember it and thinking to myself, yeah, this Victoria lady seems to be making a lot more sense than this guy who keeps talking about energy. So right off the bat, probably with my science background, I appreciated, the science-based positive reinforcement techniques. So I stayed in development and nonprofit event planning. I worked for 2 different animal shelters for about 4 years after college. And then in my mid-20s, I finally made the jump to um, leave the corporate world, essentially, although obviously nonprofit, but the typical like 9-to-5 desk job world. And I took a part-time job at an animal shelter on the behavior team. And then I started seeing clients part-time. And I did end up going and working for that shelter trainer, Beth Mullen of Dog Latin Dog Training in the Washington, D.C. area. She really took me under her wing and gave me a job. And that was 2014. So 11 years. I went through KPA right away, thank goodness, because that set me on the track to really solid, training mechanical skills right off the bat, a pretty good understanding about behavior. Although a decade later, I think to myself, wow, really, there was a lot that I didn't know. But yeah, that pretty much started my career and my love of positive reinforcement. And being in my mid-20s, living in a house with a bunch of friends in DC, being a dog trainer, it was a pretty crazy, I worked a lot, I played a lot, but I got a lot of really, really good experience being a dog trainer.
One of the main stories that I feel like I hear on this show is that, and yours is different. I like different stories. I like the same stories as well, because I think it produces lots of podcast guests for me, but also like lots of amazing trainers. And that story is, I got a dog and this dog had some issues and I met a trainer and I used aversives and it didn't work. Then I read Don't Shoot the Dog. It changed my life. But you're a little bit different. You have just gone directly, you bypassed the aversive trainer, and I'm the same. And I know that I was just lucky to connect with the right people, and also like you, I think have some like internal dialogue going like this training doesn't feel right. And immediately seeing, and I think I'm not like, I realize as I say that, it's the words are coming out of my mouth, like that's going to sound judgmental to people who maybe didn't see that. I'm not saying anyone didn't see that, but maybe the opportunities to see that just presented themselves in different ways for me and for you. But then, Juliana, I've always kind of felt, and that's what I want to get your thoughts on. I've always kind of felt, and man, like this is a real weird thing to say, and it's going to sound like wrong, but I always felt like I kind of missed out. Does that make sense? Like,
Right.
like I'm missing something. Like I don't have the appreciation. I'm not sure if that's the right word. The experience to see things as clearly, maybe as if I had like navigated that those other tools first. Like, have you ever thought that or felt that?
Yeah, we don't have the perspective of what it's like to maybe fully immerse or try aversive tools. Although I will say, like, I definitely have that with horses, and it actually didn't click until many years into my positive reinforcement journey. So it's not like, oh, because I worked this way with horses, I'm going to do it differently with dogs. It actually took probably 4 or 5 years for me to realize, like, whoa, wait a second, this is so different. But one thing that I think about a lot as positive reinforcement trainers, even those of us who haven't worked with aversives, been the ones who like deliver the unpleasant consequences or use the coercion or whatever in training. I think a lot of us, well, I'll speak for myself. I train this way because I've experienced it myself. And I think a lot of us like find positive reinforcement training because we've been on the other end of aversive behavior modification or training. And whether that is like having a really bad boss or having a really bad coach, or like maybe the way that our parents who were doing their best tried to parent us. I think many of us, and again, mostly only speaking for myself here, we're drawn to positive reinforcement because we do actually know more about coercive training and training with punishment and corrections and aversive stimuli. We just don't have, as if we're not crossover trainers, we're not the ones who have the experience delivering it. So I don't know, maybe, I don't know if that perspective of there's still an understanding about it. We just don't have as much practice being the ones delivering it. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I like how you said, I don't know why it didn't click with horse training. Don't know if that was an intended pun, but I liked it.
That's really funny. Yeah, subconscious there.
Yeah, and I just want to, I'm worried, Juliana, as we say this, that it's coming across judgmental to people who didn't say that. So I just want to reiterate, even though I've said it, and I'm repeating myself here, that there's zero judgment here, or zero, we're all just taking different paths. But I've never really thought about that before. So what you're saying is that potentially that, and I have to check my understanding here because you can see my face. Well, people who are listening can't see my face, but as my wife walked in the room, needing something from me just then, I lost my track of thought momentarily. But what you're saying is that maybe we had experienced it rather than being the deliverer. I hadn't thought about this before. We
I think a lot of us are like, we've experienced this again through like parenting or coaching or who, for whatever reason, we've been on the receiving end of teaching through punishment or aversive consequences, and we know we don't like it. So I feel like many of us can be drawn to positive reinforcement because they think there are two camps. There's like, I went through it, so you should go through it too. And then there's people who are like, I went through it, so I want to make sure the beings in my life that I have influence over don't have to go through it too.
All right, we're going to jump forward, but that in your story now. But then we're going to acknowledge that by doing that, there's a big gap in your journey that we haven't talked about. So we will circle backwards. We're going to go forwards, and then we're going to go backwards. So, and I got logic in my head as to why I'm doing this. So the listener, bear with me. Bring us up to speed in terms of 2025. Tell us kind of what your life looks like now.
Right now, I run the business that I opened actually right at the start of COVID. So I worked for that mentor who pulled me under her wing in 2014. I worked for her for 6 years. And then I started my own company, JW Dog Training, in about 5 months after the pandemic started. I think we were all seeing that boom of dog training inquiries, and what a horrific time for the world. And like, what a time to be a dog trainer, a pet professional. And so it ended up being a really great time to kind of finally jump out on my own. I had just gotten to the point where I felt like I had enough interest and experience in wanting to do things my way. And it still very much felt like a leap of faith. So I started that in, again, 2020. It'll be 5 years in September. I very quickly was able to grow a team, which came with very much its learning experiences and lessons. And I was working very, very hard as a dog trainer through 2020 when I was working under that other company, because I just had to show up to my clients and leave, and I would get paid. Man, the stress of running a business. So I was trying to maintain my client load, which was already a lot, and run my business. And I had like a major crash out basically at the beginning of 2021, which was kind of the start of me slowly starting to back away from seeing clients as frequently. And that was also when I started teaching for KPA, and I maintained doing both, like still having a pretty decent client load teaching KPA until 2023. I had kind of another crash out, and all of these are just getting me closer to, I think, the life that I want to live and what I want my day-to-day to look like, which is I don't want to be on the road a bunch anymore. I don't want to feel over, I don't want to feel too busy. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. And so I've been slowly shaping my life to look that way. And I'm lucky to do a lot of work from home. I do a lot of social media work. I have my KPA work, which is mostly from home, except for the in-person workshops. I run my team that I still have. I'm so grateful to have some incredible trainers who work for me. And then I see clients like 2 or 3 days a week, but it's just so much less than before. So I'm just really throwing myself into as much kind of virtual work as I can as a dog trainer, and also doing my best to tell others you can do this too, because man, that life on the road can be really, really challenging and lead to burnout really quickly.
Right. So my reason for asking this question is still real, but your answer has made me want to prioritize some other bits and pieces. So this conversation is just going to be all over the place today. Everyone, and there is something that is front of my mind, which is why I'm circling back to this particular part, and that is you said you had some major crash outs. Now, the reason why I haven't heard
Yeah.
anyone phrase it as a crash out before, but you used the word burnout then, and I think you're kind of talking about the
Mhm.
same thing. And the
Yes.
reason it's front of mind is we had a post in our online community about this yesterday, and I went through it myself. I crashed out in 2020. Potentially there were some similar antecedents for my crash out and your crash out, but. So I want to talk about that if it's okay with you. You don't have to. You can say you'd
Would
rather not.
love to. No, I think we need to talk about this and normalize it, because I think a lot more of us experience than we realize. Or when we do experience it, we're like, what the heck is this? Because nobody talks about it.
Well, exactly. So that's great because the post in our online community and gratitude to our ATM members, especially the ones in our members only Facebook group who jumped in there to offer support and share some thoughts. But it was exactly what you just said. Like somebody saying like, what is this? Like what is burnout? Like how do I know? Does it go away? Which leans into the idea you've just shared that we need to normalize it more, because I'm assuming, potentially incorrectly, but I don't think so, that if one of our members is asking that, then others are thinking it as well. And one of the challenges that, I jumped in and shared my thoughts and have to go back in later today as well, but I'm not a mental health professional, nor have any certifications or qualifications in that area. I just have my experience, so I speak from that. But one thing I've realized is that paired with my work in the animal training industry and our use of vocabs, is like when we're talking about terms, there's value in pausing and defining what we mean when we say terms, so we ensure that the recipient of the conversation we're having is on the same page as us, or at least understands what we talk about. So burnout, I think, is the same. Like burnout can mean so many different things for so many different people. So it's kind of makes that question hard to answer when it's posed in that way because it's so individualized. But I was wondering, like for you, like what did that look like? Like when you say crash out, like what can you see in
Yeah.
here?
Definitely. Yes, I definitely mean burnout. But when I think about when I look back at like what actually happened, burnout to me, it is a label that describes, I don't know, kind of what it sounds like losing your flame, like losing your passion, losing your energy, losing your enthusiasm. And what I experienced was this like what again, I can only feel like I can explain as a crash out, where just things really, really started to pile up. I had a lot of symptoms that were really challenging, and it basically all came to a head. So what I was experiencing was, it was really, really, I was really good when I would show up to my clients, but if I tried to do any like admin work or anything, I remember my fingers just like sitting over the keys and I just couldn't type. Like I was so, I couldn't do my work. And for years I could do my work and I was fine and I was very productive, but I got to this point where I just like couldn't do the important admin tasks, which again, this was right when I opened my business. So my admin tasks had increased significantly. I just couldn't do it. And it was like pulling teeth. And it was like, which I experience now at sometimes, like if I go too late in the day and I find myself really moving slowly or like, clicking through different tabs or pulling up Instagram a lot. I'm like, okay, whoa, I'm not being productive right now. Like this is not, I can't keep doing this. But it was again, just like really magnified at this. It happened essentially over winter break. And I had this 10 days off, which was really good, except I had this big commitment to do. Like I had to finish my tag teach course before I could start teaching KPA. And I had assigned myself like one day during break to work, and every other day I would have off. And I remember starting that day and I just like couldn't do it. I was so overwhelmed. And I ended up on the phone with my mom and I just started crying, which was like, again, not normal behavior for me. Like I was just so overwhelmed. And that was a really, really big sign to me that this is not sustainable. This is not okay. I can't, you can't work yourself out of that. And what I found is when I hit points like that, where my burnout, where I can't show up for myself, I'm no longer showing up well for clients either. The thought of like taking on more clients or like helping more people was so aversive to me. All of those were signs that I needed to do significant change. What I ended up doing was raising my rates significantly, which at least offered me more reinforcement for the work I was doing, and then also cutting back on my schedule. So making more money and working less. Surprise, that helps quite a bit.
Yeah. So the other thing that we talked about, well, firstly, thank you for sharing. Secondly, sorry that you experienced that. Thirdly, would I be correct in assuming that now in 2025 you can reflect on that and there's positives from that in terms of like how to navigate life?
Definitely, in the sense that every time where I've met with so much resistance and so much challenge, to me, I take that as information that what I'm doing isn't working. And so both of my major crash outs have resulted in me doing pretty significant pivots, whether it's like initially it was just kind of a major shift in scheduling and just again changing my rate so that at least for the amount of work I was doing, I felt like it was worth it, more worth it. And then the second one in 2023, I was really questioning if I even wanted to continue being a dog trainer. I mean, I was at the point where I was like, do I need to like look up how to be a real estate agent? Then I'm like, no, I'm going to be back at the same issue where I'm in charge of my job. And like, I wanted to not have a traditional 9 to 5 and also not have the burden of working for myself at the time. But again, ultimately, when I realized how unhappy I was like, okay, I have to make a change. And every shift has again taken me closer to the life I want, which is a life of ease, a life of fulfillment, a life of peace, and doing what I love and not doing what really fills my cup and not what empties my cup, all under the hat of dog training. But there are some things within dog training that no longer serve me right now. I might come back to them, but really focusing on the stuff that I do like doing.
Well, I think this is all super important and likely relevant for the listeners. I've had that thought, and I think it's an entrepreneurial one, where a 9 to 5 sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Paid sick days? What? Paid vacation? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and like if you do something that's potentially not as emotive as caring about the experiences of other earthlings, then hypothetically in your mind, you're like, well, I can leave it at the door when I come home.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about where my next paycheck's coming in, and I can cover all my bills because I know what I'm going to be earning. But you push through that, and many don't, I think, which is sad. Which is why I'm saying it's important, because we want positive reinforcement trainers teaching positive reinforcement out there. How did you like, do you have any input? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. Firstly, obviously, because I think it's going to be helpful for our listeners. But secondly, recently I've done an online strength finder. Now, it's obviously subjective, right? Like, can't accurately 100% describe you. It's based on I don't think it's very scientific or anything like that, but it was very helpful for me. Like, you fill out like a whole bunch of questions and it kind of like suggests what your strengths are. And then like the idea is to like
lean into that.
So yeah, so there's like, obviously there's more ways to this, but like if we're to make it really simplistic, we could say that there's 2 ways of doing things. Like, you could work to improve your weaknesses, or you could play into your strengths. And so it's helped me identify what my strengths are and set up my life to ensure that I'm leveraging those? Because that's fresh in my mind. It made me like my ears perk up when you talked about doing what fills your cup and doing what doesn't fill your cup. Was there any systematic way that you kind of worked through that, or was it more just based on your emotions and kind of what you're feeling? Like how did you navigate that space?
I love that you did that. And I love that you are starting the conversation that, I mean, of course, we see our learners as individuals and we have to see ourselves as individuals. And where this starts is not necessarily looking at the person next to you who, your dog training colleague and going, well, they do things like that, or, they do primarily private training, or they do primarily group classes. Like that must be what I should be doing. And seeing absolutely, yes, what are you good at? What do you like doing? Because guess what? You can stick to just those things. For me, it was very much a lot of self-awareness and being very tuned into myself and really listening to myself, and not when something felt really hard or challenging or draining, not being like, well, I just need to push through, which actually, by the way, I did do for a while. I was getting to the point where I didn't want to do as much training. And then I saw a speaker at Clicker Expo who was like, you can learn a lot. And he did this example of he's like walking in a circle and he's moving one foot. You can learn a lot, but then you only go one direction, and you can do a lot, do a lot of training, and then you only go the other direction. So you need to be doing both. You need to be learning and training. And at that Clicker Expo, this 2 years ago, I'm like, shoot, I really do need to be doing more training. Even though at this point, like seeing private clients and problem solving with private clients is something I found really draining. Like the problem solving piece is just, it got really, really not enjoyable for me anymore. But I started to take clients. So again, this was 2023, like kind of pre-crash out. I started to continue to take clients thinking like, oh, I just need to do this more. Or like I need to keep my practice up to make sure that I still feel really competent doing it. And that's what it is. And like, surprise, that didn't go well. Like I was really like not enjoying the clients. They were perfectly fine people, but I just my heart wasn't in it anymore. So I had to really, really listen to that. And I've been in therapy for like a decade. And I was talking to my therapist about it. I'm like, I need a business coach. I need to talk to somebody about what I can be doing instead of this, because this isn't working anymore. And I think she like very gently said to me, like, okay, yes, we can look into that. Like, and just like see what happens if you keep exploring this here in therapy. And sure enough, a couple, over that summer of 2023 and into 2024, yes, therapy helped me discover a lot about myself, my identity, what felt good to me, what didn't feel good to me, what my true, real, like goals for my whole life and my being was, not just like my business goals. And through that work, my business and my personal life have slowly started to align and not feel as much in friction. So I would really say it was just like a lot of personal work that I did to find out what I really wanted my life to look like and how I could make that happen.
I feel like everyone should be in therapy.
Yes, I definitely agree.
What a sweeping, overgeneralized statement, right?
I know. But we're still not at the point yet where we've like when nobody talks about therapy and then too many people talk about therapy, or like too many people go to therapy, like we're not there yet. So I think we can still keep pushing, like go to therapy.
Yeah, well, I think it's a really interesting space. What my biggest strength, Juliana, was it's called futuristic. So it's like I think in the future.
Fascinating.
And I told my wife about this, and she's like, because the pro of that is like I can leverage that now like I brought that idea into my consciousness. But like the con of that is that it can be really overwhelming for people who don't think like that. When like I focus on that, and like my mindset and my goals and my work and my actions are based on the future. So my wife really agreed with that.
Oh my God, isn't that so validating when you tell somebody, like when I come home from therapy and I talk to my wife about what we talked about, she's like, duh. I'm like, okay, you do see me.
Well, my first one was like competitive, and I was like, I don't agree with that at all. Like I was reading the thing, I was like, no, it's not me. And I said to my wife,
right.
Like I didn't say that it was, she knew I was doing a strength finder thing, but I didn't say that it was related to that. I was like, do you think I'm competitive? She's like, hell yes. And I'm like, oh. Okay.
Oh, that's amazing.
So maybe I am. But yeah, I think it's interesting one idea I came up with was just I find technology super interesting. Like I love like all of this AI stuff, and I've noticed that more than anyone really that I've come across, like I'm just fascinated by it, and I use it and I explore it. So like doing that is just one action I can take to like lean into who I am. But with regards to therapy, that's interesting. I saw a quote from, and I don't know, people are going to love me and hate me for this, because rightly so, there's a lot of anxiety around it. I think like I think if it goes the wrong way, it can be incredibly dangerous, and I think it already is, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
But someone from Facebook, I don't know, was like Mark Zuckerberg, and I know like Mark Zuckerberg,
Yes.
great feels about that guy, but like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not like advocating for the source of this quote. I'm just saying it was
We
a
know,
quote.
Ryan, it's okay.
Thank you. And anyway, it's like in the future, like your 5 biggest friends are going to be AI, and like I know, right? Yeah, exactly that feeling. I think you summed up what the listeners of the show feel. And for me, I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying like because I've like learned this about myself and I'm leaning into it, I'm exploring it more, and I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Like I think that's interesting for therapy as well. Like and the role of therapists and your access to it. Because one of the sticking points to therapy, right, is cost. Like
it's a sticking point for everything. For like
right. So what if it was free?
There are often paywalls between us and
help,
good resources, right? Whether you're talking about dog training or therapy, it's like there are always going to be accessibility issues, and it speaks to like healthcare issues in many different countries, and therapy should be much more easily accessible. And I now feel like, I don't know, if you have some money allocated to put towards like your business and your life, that might be a good place to put it. Maybe before I don't know, everybody's different. But for me, I'm glad I invested in myself that way before, paying for some crazy expensive business coach.
Yeah, I think it's smart and I think it's brave. I think, and I said it too fast. I think it's brave. I think it's confronting. Is it confronting? Did you find it confronting?
What, to be in therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that. I love that. Like, again, my wife says about me, she's like, oh, if there's something to figure out, you'll figure it out. Like I love like digging deep, figuring out why I am the way that I am, why I like behave the way that I do. And one might say like why my antecedents are the way that they are. I find it so empowering. And for me, the reinforcement has been so reinforcing. Like I, again, live this life that is just so much, again, more peaceful and so in line with what I've always wanted. And so like the quote unquote result that I've seen now, remember everyone, I've been in therapy for a decade, but it has just been so incredibly beneficial for me and has allowed me to live this wonderful life. And I think you have to be ready to confront hard stuff. And my gosh, what a beautiful outcome it can produce.
It was funny. As evidenced by Juliana DeWillems, everybody.
I'm just glad that you are, I think like hearing men talk about therapy is also really important. And
I am the only male at positive reinforcement events frequently, Juliana.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so there's a lot to talk about with that too. But it's good that, I'm just grateful that you've opened up the conversation and also shared about your strengths. I think that is really cool. And I find it so interesting, this idea, because as somebody who's like worked so hard to like live in the present, this idea that you are so future focused, you're totally right, man. That I'm like, wait, no, I'm trying to like live in the now, not live in the who knows when. So that's so interesting that you've learned that about yourself and that you're able to lean into it.
Yeah, and it energizes me. So, when you say fill your cup, like
totally.
And then back to a conversation that you listener went privy to, but we talked about like these podcasts we're recording in, because for the listener, we can see each other right now. You guys can't because you're just listening to our audio. But Juliana's like, why don't you stick that on YouTube if that's okay to talk about a conversation we hit before we push record?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So
but like that like I found in the past that drains me, like the social media side, which is I guess something that you and I didn't talk about. But yeah, like thinking about the future, like it energizes me. But yeah, it can be totally overwhelming for people because we just organize our wills, Juliana. Because we got two
Totally.
kids in the house, and my wife's like, "Oh my god, like stop it!" I'm like, "No, what about this?"
Totally.
This is anyway for you. Social media fills your cup. Would I be correct in
Oh
saying?
yeah.
Talk to us about
I
that.
very surprisingly love social media. Now this is really interesting. So I am JW dog training on Instagram, and I've grown quite a big following there over since opening my business in 2020. And this is such an interesting kind of like case study in you you get more of what you focus on. So I'm like, I'm just very, my page is meant to be very positive and welcoming, and for better or worse, like I think it's important when people are out there yelling about harmful training, and that's not what I do. So I've created these just like really wonderful corners of the internet, and I get to connect with people who love their dogs, who want to learn more about how to help their dogs, and so I just have really enjoyed it. It's been a really cool creative outlet for me. I love making videos. I love making posts. It again, the reinforcement has totally been there in many different ways. Like it's cool to see your audience grow so much. The opportunities I've gotten from it are really incredible. So as of right now, it totally still fills my cup. And I told myself I would never join TikTok ever. Like, I'm like, if I've joined TikTok, something is wrong. But I actually joined TikTok for a couple months ago, like totally randomly on a whim. I'm like, nah, let's see what happens. And it's like also going great. I had this idea that TikTok was like, dog talk. Everybody talks about how problematic the dog trainers on TikTok are, which they are, a lot of them. Gen Z is going to grow up thinking like all dogs have to wear prong and shock collars. And but again, like I've had this really pleasant experience where people are like really grateful for my content. They're really nice about my content. They're not combative. They're not mean. Like it's just been really, really lovely. And again, the reinforcers for the business certainly don't hurt.
That's why I originally wanted to jump forward in your story. And some of the other things you talked about when you were talking about that was a couple of things. Firstly, from one predominantly digitally based business owner to another, I appreciate that I have to keep my sword sharp. That's my metaphor for saying you don't train. And I know that, like, I know my sword gets blunt, and I want to be out there going to clients' houses or working in the zoos or whatever I'm doing to keep that sword sharp. But you said as well, or one thing you wanted to communicate that I took away from what you're saying is for the listeners of the show, like it's possible to be a professional animal trainer. I mean, and me are evidence of that, but it's possible to be a positive reinforcement trainer and have a predominantly digital business. Did I interpret correctly what you were saying before? I just want you to speak to that for the listeners of the show.
I certainly think so. I think, again, COVID was a really horrible time for a lot of people, and it thrusted us all on the internet, and it showed the effectiveness of training online. And I think absolutely you can start to pivot yourself online. It definitely takes a different kind of work. Like we all know how to like market to our local vets and, go to community events and stuff like that. So you do have to work very hard to create a different type of audience and find ways, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, which they all have very different audiences and different pros and cons of showing up digitally and then converting that audience to paid clients, whether it's like one-to-one training or man, there's a whole world out there of people who sell like digital products. Self-paced courses are really popular now, or like hybrid courses where it's like an 8-week course and then you have X amount of seats and you meet a few times during that process, but a lot of it's pre-recorded. So really trying to reduce the amount of time you as the human have to put towards, as trainers, like this one-to-one, like 1 hour of our life is per money that limits how much money we can make. And so you there are a lot of ways, especially when you go digital, to scale. You do have to educate yourself on these new ways of doing things. Memberships are huge now, obviously. You know all about that. You were there doing memberships before the rest of the world was, but those can be hugely beneficial. Those can be a really great way to make your services more accessible if you are doing primarily one-to-one and that cost feels out of some people's budgets. Offering a lower cost membership is a great option. It's, again, like a great way to scale. And these are just things that I'm starting to really explore more and trying to maximize. And what's important is to have the mindset that it is possible, because if you tell yourself, no, it's not possible, I can only ever make money as a dog trainer by being in people's homes or teaching classes at, the local pet store, like, you have to have the mindset that it is possible and you will find a way to make it work. Because if you believe that you can do it, like all the other people out there who are doing it, whether it's dog trainers or other professions, you will find a way to do it and to make money digitally and being online.
Do you feel passionate about this? Like, well, like the reason I ask is because, all right, we're dog trainers or animal trainers, or not necessarily, for myself and maybe for you to listen, not necessarily dogs, but working with behavior and non-human learners and human learners, obviously. And then if you want to do that for your life, then you need to learn how to monetize that. And then you said earlier, obviously for social media, there's those reinforcers for your business. But for me anyway, like I find it interesting and see that I learn things from 10 years in business that I can share with others to maybe help them. Like, and that's kind of where like I get energized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that the same for you?
Yeah, I love talking about it because I feel like, well, one, a rising tide raises all ships. Like, positive reinforcement trainers doing well is good for all of us. And I'm like, go forth and live your best life. Like, whatever that looks like as a dog trainer. I want us to stop being overworked. I want us to stop being underpaid. I want us to, stop telling ourselves that like we have to be miserable in order to survive in this industry. Like, no, you can make your career look however you want, and it might take some creativity. It definitely will take kind of some trust and a mindset shift, but it's totally possible. And I want to just like yell that from the rooftops, because again, I'm tired of seeing my friends crashing out like I did. And so if we can help other people be successful and do well, we're only going to be helping more and more people and dogs and spread the word of positive reinforcement more, lest we forget, like, if the more people burn out and leave this industry, they're not able to help anyone, so we have to keep people in this industry and excited about what they're doing.
A rising tide raises all ships. Is that what you said?
Yeah. The rising tide raises all ships. Yeah.
The rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's exactly what it says, but it's like when one positive reinforcement trainer does well, like it helps all of us, because they're out there connecting with their clients and their clients are saying, wow, that positive reinforcement thing really worked. And they visit with their, relative in another state and go, I did this positive reinforcement thing. You should find a positive reinforcement trainer. Like, it's a ripple effect. And it is like the success of one of us is the success of all of us. And we should all be kind of propping each other up and helping each other be successful.
Here at Animal Training Academy, Juliana, ripples is our word. We have another podcast show called Ripple Makers. So I feel like my job is done. You mentioned ripples. We're good.
That's amazing.
But again, more evidence that I need to actually share videos from these episodes, Juliana, because I think this is the third time I've said this. I asked Juliana if she was positive. And I don't know if you knew what you were doing, but you were like pumping your fist as you were talking then. So clearly.
I'm a little passionate.
But cool. Like I said we'll circle back, and I want to circle back because I think many people would look at the opportunity to co-present frequent live sessions with Ken Ramirez as like, if I do that, like my life is complete.
Believe me, I agree.
Talk us through what it's like to work with Ken and what I can only imagine participating as you do as co-host in or on the Life on the Ranch sessions, you tick like my upskilling part of my needs, so that I'll make sure I'm walking circles in both ways, to use your metaphor from before, is complete. Like how did you land that gig? And what's it been like? What's that journey been like? And tell us about Life from the Ranch, just in case the listener of the show doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Yeah. Live from the Ranch is a free monthly broadcast that Ken started during COVID, April 2020. He, like everybody, we're at home. He's like, all right, guess I'll get on live. And he did it once by himself. And then he realized I might need some help. So, and now it's the first Thursday of every month, and we have different guests, and it's like the coolest thing. And we've been going for 5 years, crazy. And so one thing about me in my career is like, I've always worked really, really hard to kind of like make myself known. So anytime I go to Clicker Expo, I try to introduce myself to people. I used to have this thing, man, I'm really like breaking the fourth wall here. I used to always wear this specific shirt the first day. It was like this really bright blue, and it had our company logo on it, because like I wanted to be remembered as like the person wearing the blue. And so I'd always do that. And sure enough, like when you're Kathy today, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that blue from last year. And I'm like, oh, you do? And so I have always made an effort at like making sure people know who I am. And I also want to mention this because I think there can be this misconception that like, if you're good enough, people will find you. And of course you have to have like the skills or whatever people are looking for. And there's a huge piece to putting yourself out there. And I also very much do want to acknowledge that I'm like a young white woman who like generally meets society's beauty standards. So I have a lot of privilege in where I'm showing up to these spaces, and that's can't like be glazed over. That's a really important piece to why, yes, I knock on the door, but a lot of the reason why people open the door is because, again, I'm very privileged. So that being said, I went to Live from the Ranch one year, I went to the ranch with Ken one year. So they have classes at the ranch. And that was the first time that I like really got to know Ken face to face. We did a week class. It was really cool. At that time, I think I wanted to become KPA faculty. So again, instead of waiting around for them to say, we're looking for faculty, I said, are you looking for faculty? Let me send you my resume. I sent Ken my resume, because he was basically like, yeah, just email me your resume. While I'm at the ranch, I sent him my resume, and on that has like the TV stuff that I've done, because I've done a decent amount of news stuff and pet TV stuff, which again, I would like email the stations, be like, do you want a thing on clicker training? This will help your audience with dogs. And so he knew I did TV stuff, and we talked about it a little bit that week. Fast forward to when COVID started. Clicker Expo was the weekend everything shut down. Clicker Expo was a big networking time for me, as I've said. Like, it was a time where I really wanted to put myself in front of people who had influence to see like what it could do for my career. And I had to make the decision that Thursday I was leaving. The world was starting to shut down. Had to make the decision: am I getting on the plane or not? Like, it might not be safe. It might get canceled. Am I going or not? And I ultimately made the decision not to go, which thank goodness I did, because it did end up getting canceled. But I was so devastated because I was like, I missed my big networking event. Like, this is so upsetting. And, this is like really, it's once a year where all these people are in one place, seeing all my colleagues, seeing all my training friends. And like, I missed it. This is really going to, like, who knows, like what this will or won't do for my career, but man, what a missed opportunity. Well, like a month later, I get this email from Ken, and he says, we're doing this Live from the Ranch thing, and we realized that I need a co-host. And I know that you've done your TV stuff and you have some experience doing your webinars and your TV stuff, which he knew because I had sent him my resume the summer prior. And would you be interested in co-hosting with me for this one episode? Basically, he's like, we're probably going to switch around co-hosts, but like, do you want to do it with me this one time? I'm like, Ken Ramirez is asking me to co-host something. Oh my gosh. Like, of course, and that was our first one. And so he started in April, but we were doing it weekly then. So I started the second week, and the rest is history. It's been 5 years since then. So yeah, it's an incredible, incredible opportunity. My gosh. Yes. While I'm not it's like so much continuing education just like slammed into this, like so much, so frequently every week that first year, and then every month since then. And it's been incredible to be able to talk to the guests. I've been able to improve my interview skills, my thinking on the fly skills. It's such an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, well, congratulations on. I paused there for a reason, and I'll circle back to why soon. Congratulations on getting that gig on 5 years. That is cool. I feel the same with hosting 2 webinars a month in ATA. Like, I just often I'm doing logistics and helping people get in and solving challenges for tech problems with people, but like, just even through like distracted participation, like without just doing my job, like it's just like an ever expanding knowledge base.
Totally. So much information.
But one thing I wanted to take back to it, and that's why I paused when I said congratulations, is firstly, like I remember back in 2010 or something, 2011 maybe, I was at San Diego Zoo and I met some of the bird show team, and they were like, "Oh, yo, are you looking for work in North America? You should email this guy." So I emailed him that night, and then I went back to the zoo the next day, and someone was going to take me around the park, and they're like, "Oh, just wait here in the cafe with this guy." And the guy was like the guy that I'd emailed, and like he was sat there, and I was like, "Oh, hey." And then like we're talking about him, I'm talking to him, and we get on this golf cart, we're driving around the zoo, and his wife calls, who also works at the zoo, and she's like, "Oh, we got this awesome resume from this guy in New Zealand," and I don't know that like she was saying that, but all I could hear him say was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sitting next to him right now." Like driving around San Diego Zoo, and I was like, "What is happening?"
That's incredible.
And then anyway, like he rang me like a week later and like offered me a job, and I ended up moving to Canada for 8 months and like working in this huge bird show over there. But my point was like, was I lucky, or like, was I like I was in North America, like, I was at the bird show, like I was going home on my holiday, like sending resumes. Was I lucky? I think yes. Like, what are the chances of that? But like also like.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're lucky, and that luck wouldn't have happened if you hadn't put yourself out there.
Which is what I wanted to circle back to. That's why I paused when I said congratulations, because like I don't think people do this enough.
I agree.
Right? They want the people to come knocking on their doors and be like, "Hey, you don't know me, but I just realized how awesome you are, and I've come here to give you an opportunity." Like that just doesn't happen, right? Like you've got to
right. Although you did come and knock on my door and invite me to this awesome opportunity. So it does happen sometimes. No, but I know exactly what you mean. And I would argue that some people might hear you say like, "Oh, people are waiting for, you wait for someone to come to you. You're expecting somebody to come to you," like might think that that's like ego or overconfident, like, "Oh, well, if they want me, they'll come find me." But I actually think it can be totally the opposite. And it's like, it's our imposter syndrome. It's our lack of confidence. It's us thinking, no, it couldn't be me. And I'm here to tell you, it can be you. It can absolutely be you. You are qualified. You, meaning whoever's listening, you're qualified. You're an excellent trainer. You absolutely have something to say that somebody else hasn't said, or a different way of saying it. You have a new perspective. You have interesting perspectives. Like there's so much value that you have that people could find useful and helpful. And it is absolutely worth it to put yourself out there. And it will get easier the more you try it.
Yeah, but like getting rejected sucks.
Yes, it does. And like getting rejected, well, what do they say? It's like rejection is the universe's redirection. So when you see rejection as like just like a little knock in the right direction, and I could go down a whole rabbit hole of like of mindset, subconscious and mindset shifting, and really like just trusting that everything works out for you and everything that's meant to find you will find you. And when you have that mindset, the rejection can be a little bit easier, trusting that like, okay, well, I'm not going to be doing that. And I got valuable information for how to like change my pitch for next time, or like I'll seek out events that are like different types of events, or like there's a bazillion pieces of information, valuable information you can take from rejection, none of which being you're not good enough.
We just got the title for this episode. Rejection is the universe's redirection. I love that. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget it. But also on that note, we love hearing about people's behavior odysseys. So thank you very much for sharing. And I guess to circle back to the metaphors we've been using, it was people knocking on my door to say, hey, Juliana DeWillems is awesome. You have to reach out to her. And it was the repetition. It was the repetition of that made me do this. That made me knock on your door.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you.
But just before we wrap up today, part one of our conversation today, we're going to get Juliana back, everyone, because I want to talk about management. Ken Ramirez specifically to the horn of your new book, Management, and said that it was a really valuable asset, a relatively new valuable asset for people in our community to, one, just become aware of that it exists, and two, to read for their for many benefits, which we'll talk about in part two. But before we wrap up, can you just tell everyone listening where they can go to find out more about you, what you do, and how they might be able to slide into your DMs?
Come find me on Instagram. That's usually where I am. JW Dog Training. If you are on TikTok, I am there too, JW Dog Training. But that's the easiest way to access me. That you can find website and book and everything else on social media.
Amazing. And we will, of course, link to Juliana's Instagram account in our show notes. We will officially wrap up part one of this episode here. This has been so much fun. So on behalf of myself and everyone listening, Juliana, we really appreciate you, and we really appreciate you coming on the show with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
And thank you so much for listening as well. This is your host, Ryan Cartledge, signing off from this episode of the Animal Training Academy podcast show. We hope today's conversation inspired you and equipped you with new tools for your trainer's toolbox. Remember, every challenge in training is an opportunity to learn and sharpen your animal training geekery. Embrace the rough patches, learn from them, and keep improving. And don't forget, the path to growing your skills and expanding your knowledge continues beyond this episode. Visit www.atamember.com to join our supportive membership, where you will find a community of trainers just like you. Together, we're making a huge positive difference in the lives of animal and human learners worldwide. Until next time, keep honing your skills, stay awesome, and remember, every interaction with an animal or human learner is your opportunity to create ripples. We're here cheering you on every step of the way. See you at the next episode.